Fáilte, welcome everybody to our Winter Solstice event, Grianstad an Gheimhridh, a program of songs, stories, music, and some visual clips from Ireland to mark this special time of year. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the death of one of our members in November. Rabbi Joyce Galaski was a keen student of the Irish language, and she was so interested in the language because one of her sets of grandchildren was being reared as Gaeilge in the Irish language. There's a phrase in Irish that's used when someone passes away. Tá sí imithe ar slí na fírinne. She's on the path of truth. That seems appropriate to mark the passing of Rabbi Joyce and people of all religions and none. Tá sí imithe ar slí na fírinne. And now allow me to offer a brief introduction to the idea of the winter solstice and a little bit of background about what happens in Ireland to mark this event. In Ireland, the winter solstice is usually marked at Newgrange, County Meath, which is north of Dublin City. And it's one of a number of Neolithic tombs located in the Boyne Valley, named after the goddess Boann, a major tourist site. This massive stone structure is 5,000 years old, older than the pyramids, and predates other such structures like Stonehenge by about 1,000 years. Its Irish name, Slí an Bhrú, magical mound, points to its pagan spiritual origins. In the 1960s, excavators from University College Cork discovered an unusual phenomenon at Newgrange. Starting at dawn on the shortest day of the year, December 21st, the winter sun illuminates the long stone passage to a womb-like chamber, a marvel of architecture and design that demonstrates the sophistication of these earlier inhabitants of Ireland. The stone circle at the UMass Amherst campus has a similar purpose to Newgrange. The photo on our flyer for today's event was taken last December there. Its 16 standing stones line up with the rising and setting sun at the solstices and the equinoxes. Erected in the year 2000, it was the brainchild of the late Professor Judith Young to be used as a teaching tool to improve our understanding of the universe and as a cultural learning experience, a symbol of the connection between our modern society and our past. You'll find many stone circles like this one located throughout Ireland: Drumbeg in County Cork, Grange in County Limerick, and other places associated with the Celts, such as Scotland, Brittany, and they're across Britain too. Grianstad, the word for solstice in the Irish language, literally means when the sun stops and stands still. Many religious traditions and observances have their roots in pre-Christian beliefs, and Christmas is no exception, which is why we have several Christmas-related readings in our solstice event program today. The Celts celebrated with fire for the 12 days of the solstice festival, and this is replicated in the Irish tradition of placing a lighted candle in the window for the 12 days of Christmas to welcome passing strangers in need of shelter. My own mother, Mary, born and raised on a farm in Tullyleague on the Limerick-Kerry border, maintained this practice throughout her life. Here is a poem I wrote to acknowledge her commitment to this tradition of welcoming the stranger. Christmas candles. She brought from Tullyleague to Tullamore the ritual of placing Christmas candles in every window, each candle held firmly with newspaper balled tightly into the base of a glass jam jar. On the outside, to cover what she saw as the ugliness of plain print, she wrapped bright paper, tied a ribbon on top, a suitable welcome for the Holy Family or strays in need of tea. I wondered at the originals, their pure newspaper and glass simplicity, with scraps from the Limerick Leader, the Kerryman, obituaries, political news, football scores, the price of a pair of Frisian heifers. Now Tim will play a short film about Newgrange, produced by the Irish Government's Office of Public Works. Take it away, Tim. Jonathan and Amanda.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Tim. Thanks, Ita. We'd like to play a few tunes for you just to have a bit of music. First tune we'll play, there are two reels, so good dancing tunes. The first one is called Corny is Coming, and the second one is called The Collier's Reel. So hopefully the sound and everything will work through Zoom. We'll see.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Amanda. I'm going to move things along here with a poem, a Christmas poem, not always chosen. This is Christmas Bells by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Before I start, Longfellow was a very famous American poet of his day, born in 1807 in Portland, Maine, which was still a part of Massachusetts at the time. Later in life, and until the time of his death in 1882, he lived in the area of Cambridge, Mass. He was the author of Paul Revere's Ride and the Song of Hiawatha. In 1861, Longfellow's second wife, Fanny Appleton, was severely burned and later died in an accident in the family home, which was something that burned Longfellow himself when he tried to save her. The following year, his eldest son, a lieutenant in the Union Army, was stricken by a bullet that nearly killed him. Both years, the poet was consumed by grief at Christmas time. But by 1863, he was able to write this poem, Christmas Bells, originally 7 stanzas long, only 5 lines each. 2 stanzas are often omitted today as they speak almost directly to the Civil War that was raging at the time. However, they're included here today as they also seem to speak to these times that we're living through. So Christmas Bells. I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, and wild and sweet the words repeat of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And thought how, as the day had come, the belfries of all Christendom had rolled along the unbroken song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Till ringing, singing on its way, the world revolved from night to day, a voice, a chime, a chant sublime of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then from each black accursed mouth, the cannon thundered in the south, and with the sound the carols drowned of peace on earth, goodwill to men. It was as if an earthquake rent the hearthstones of a continent and made forlorn the households born of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And in despair I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then pealed the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. You might recognize a great many phrases in that poem after it had been reworked by John Baptiste Calkin in 1872 to become what is the great American classic Christmas carol, I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day. So as we move on now in our holiday celebration, peace on earth and goodwill to all.
Okay, so speaking of holiday themed songs, I'm going to sing a song for you that it's a little silly. It's a I actually don't know who wrote it. I know it was performed by the Irish Rovers and a couple other groups, but I think it's a fairly well-known Irish Christmas song, and it has to do with a cake, a Christmas cake, and I think many Irish households would be familiar with the Christmas cake, which is made every year, and it would be like a fruit cake that we're familiar with, chock full of different kinds of fruits and nuts and flavors and probably some brandy and everything in there. And so this song is just making fun of that particular tradition a little bit, and the chorus will repeat. And yes, there are quite a few words in the chorus, but I would love it if at home you tried to join in and try to sing along. So here we go. Miss Fogarty's Christmas Cake is the name of this song. As I sat in my window last evening, the letterman brought it to me, a little gilt-edged invitation saying, "Gilhooly, come over tea." I knew that the Fogartys sent it, so I went just for old friendship's sake, and the first thing they gave me to tackle was a slice of Miss Fogarty's cake. There were plums and prunes and cherries, there were citrons and raisins and cinnamon too, there was nutmeg, cloves and berries, and a crust that was nailed on with glue. There were caraway seeds in abundance, such as work up a fine stomach ache. They could kill a man twice after eating a slice of Miss Fogarty's Christmas cake. Miss Mulligan wanted to try it, but really it wasn't no use, for we worked on it over an hour, and we couldn't get none of it loose. Till Murphy came in with a hatchet, and Kelly came in with a saw. That cake was enough, be the powers above, for to paralyze any man's jaws. There were plums and prunes and cherries, there were citrons and raisins and cinnamon too, there was nutmeg, cloves and berries, and a crust that was nailed in with glue. There were caraway seeds in abundance, such as work up a fine stomach ache, that could kill a man twice after eating a slice of Miss Fogarty's Christmas cake. Miss Fogarty, proud as a peacock, kept smiling and blinking away, till she tripped over Flanagan's brogans, and she spilled the homebrew in her tea. "Gilhooly," she says, "you're not eatin', have a little bit more for me sake." "And no, Miss Fogarty," says I, "for I've had quite enough of your cake." There were plums and prunes and cherries, there were citrons and raisins and cinnamon too, there was nutmeg, cloves and berries, and a crust that was nailed on with glue. There were caraway seeds in abundance, such as work up a fine stomach ache, that could kill a man twice after eating a slice of Miss Fogarty's Christmas cake. Maloney was took with a colic, O'Donnell a pain in his head, McNaughton lay down on the sofa, and he swore that he wished he was dead. Miss Bailey went into hysterics, and there she did wriggle and shake, and everyone swore they were poisoned just from eating Miss Fogarty's cake. This is your last chance, sing along if you want. There were plums and prunes and cherries, there were citrons and raisins and cinnamon too, there was nutmeg, cloves and berries, and a crust that was nailed on with glue. There were caraway seeds in abundance, such as work up a fine stomach ache, that could kill a man twice after eating a slice of Miss Fogarty's Christmas cake. It could kill a man twice after eating a slice of Miss Fogarty's Christmas cake. Thank you.
That was wonderful. That was absolutely wonderful, and a very hard act to follow. Usually Sam Hannigan reads this poem for us, but he can't be with us this year, so I'm taking his place. This is the poem many of you are familiar with, The Night Before Christmas. It was published by Clement Clark Moore on December 23rd, 1823 in the Troy Sentinel newspaper in upstate New York under the title A Visit from St. Nicholas. But it has been mostly popularized through the Little Golden Book series known as the The Night Before Christmas, which I'll show you here, just in case this might look familiar to you. And it retains its original lyrics from the original. It was published in 1949, but it retains those 1823 lyrics. So here we go. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled down for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn I heard such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave a luster of midday to objects below, when what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be Saint Nick. More rapid than eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cuban, on Donner and Blitzen, to the to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky. So up to the housetop his coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each tiny hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard of his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke, it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a round little belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work and filled all the stockings and turned with a jerk. And laying his finger aside of his nose and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
Okay, our next piece that we're going to have is a little piece of film clip from RTE News. There'll be an Irish archaeologist that's going to explain the significance of the burial chamber inside of New Grange.
We're now inside the passage tomb here at Newgrange, and I'm joined by Professor Tom Ray, who's an interest in astroarchaeology, and he's from the Dublin Institute of Advanced Studies. Tell me, Professor, what would the people who built this chamber 5,000 years ago, what would they have seen?
Well, they would have seen something quite different from what we see today. 3,200 BC, when this monument was built, the tilt of the Earth's axis was a little bit different than it is now. And I think most people know this tilt gives us the seasons. It gives us our winter and our summer. The tilt then was a little bit larger. The net result of that was that the days, the shortest day of the year was a bit shorter, and the longest day of the year was that little bit longer. It also meant that the sun would have risen a little bit further south on the shortest day of the year. Now, what's very interesting about Newgrange is, I think most people know about the roof box at the entrance, but they mightn't realise that as they walk in, the floor rises, such that the actual floor here is level with the roof box. And that means that when the sun rose 3200 BC, the light would have actually reached across the floor and way back into the chamber there. Nowadays, we have to wait about 11 minutes before the sun actually enters the chamber. The result of that is that the sunlight ends up more or less in the middle of this main chamber here. So the builders of Newgrange actually built it so it was perfect for sunrise in 3200 BC. Nowadays, of course, we can do it with modern equipment very, very easily. But for somebody from 3200 BC to try and actually determine the point of what we call the winter solstice would have been difficult enough. But it does indicate that they were extremely intelligent and very civilized people.
Wonderful to get an image of the inside of the Newgrange chamber. There's a waiting list to witness the solstice within the chamber. I've been at Newgrange, not on the solstice, but around the time of the solstice. And I think if anybody is planning to go to Ireland, and hopefully we'll all be able to travel soon, it should be a place that's top of your list of places to go to, just located north of Dublin. We segue now to a poem I wrote last winter when I should have been in Ireland visiting my family and friends there. One of the things that sustained me was snowshoeing, would you believe? Getting out, and we're perfectly positioned here in Amherst with all this beautiful conservation land. And so I wrote this poem in Irish, and I'll read it in Irish first, and then I'll give you the English translation. But it's an unusual thing to hear something like snowshoes in Irish, because of course it wouldn't be something that's common to Ireland at all. So, Broga Schnachte. Broga Schnachte. Schnachte is the Irish word for snow. Mishnach. Mishnach. Haring is jach an oer. Fuaranish, Kinte, an gire, lawn, agus lin. Kaffer an seile caha vin oitegen I lár COVID. Ai glat. Curars de vroge schnachte is schulemachs na pork na baan. Veach na krien kail oor de glube I ngwei garv gan brische. Eistlo. Lig dan rihem uhe. An lúske, das, sucker, de chémene a rora. Bí cuaramach, tá aniveh fion mor himpelart. Nach go an coyote a hulamur a rare. Snowshoes. Courage. Courage. Inhale the fresh air. Cold, certainly. Winter is with us. You must live your life someplace during COVID. Get on with it. Put on your snowshoes. Walk out in the white fields. Observe the tall, thin trees swaying in the fierce winds without breaking. Listen to the steady rhythm of their sway. Let that tempo guide your steps. But be careful. There are wild creatures about. Didn't we hear the coyotes call last night? Shinawir, Broga Schnachte. So our next piece is over to music from our resident musicians and wonderful Gael Gores, Amanda agus Shanachon. Well lived, lads.
Ain't Meyer fada Ija Gurmil Moiget. We love that poem. We're gonna play a jig for you guys, which is called Helvic Head. Do you want to tell the story about Helvic Head? He's gonna tell a story.
Just for a few seconds, I won't ramble on. So a couple summers ago, being a school teacher, I usually like to spend my summers in Ireland. And a couple summers ago, I did what a friend of mine actually called Gaeltacht topping. So I'd go from the Irish-speaking areas of Ireland back and forth. So I'd go from like Gleador and Donegal all down to Spiddle and Connemara, and then down to like Waterford and down in the south. And so Helvic Head is a point down in County Waterford. And I actually hadn't made the connection. And then I was down there with some friends, and I noticed on the map Helvic Head was there. I thought, oh, that's like the tune. So I grabbed a whistle from my bag and walked out to the end of Helvic Head and sat there, played the tune on Helvic Head. I said, oh, that, it's really not a big deal, but, it was kind of one of those, music nerd things to do. So it's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
We love that too.
It's great.
So much fun.
Thank you. That was absolutely gorgeous. This is Annie again, and I am going to read you a long excerpt and then a short excerpt from a really wonderful poem, A Child's Christmas in Wales. This was originally published in 1952 by the Welsh poet Dylan Thomas, and it actually emerged from an earlier work that he recorded for the BBC radio. It's a reminiscence of Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and Christmas evening, and it's one of his most popular poems. It's also spoken from the viewpoint of a man remembering through the eyes and voice of a child. And it presents the poet's very skillful play with language alongside his memories of rituals and family traditions at Christmas. It's well worth finding online and easily found online. And if you can get your hands on it, I suggest you print it out and ask someone to read it to you. So here goes the longer part and then the shorter part. One Christmas was so much like another in those years around the sea town corner now, and out of all sound except the distant speaking of the voices I sometimes hear a moment before sleep, that I can never remember whether it snowed for 6 days and 6 nights when I was 12, or whether it snowed for 12 nights and 12 days when I was 6. All the Christmases rolled down toward the two-tongued sea like a cold and headlong moon bundling down the sky that was our street, and they stop at the rim of the ice-edged, fish-freezing waves. I plunge my hands in the snow and bring out whatever I could find. In goes my hand into that wool-white, bell-tongued ball of holidays resting at the rim of the carol-singing sea, and out come Mrs. Prothero and the firemen. It was on the afternoon of Christmas Eve, and I was in Mrs. Prothero's garden, waiting for cats with her son, Jim. It was snowing. It was always snowing at Christmas. December in my mind is as white as Lapland, though there were no reindeer. But there were cats. Patient, cold, and callous, our hands wrapped in socks, we waited to snowball the cats. Sleek and long as jaguars and horrible whiskered, spitting and snarling, they would slink and sidle over the white back garden walls, and the lynx-eyed hunters, Jim and I, fur-capped and moccasined trappers, from Hudson Bay off Mumbles Road, would hurl our deadly snowballs at the green of their eyes. The wise cats never appeared. We were so still, Eskimo-footed Arctic marksmen, in the muffling silence of the eternal snows, eternal since Wednesday, that we never heard Mrs. Prothero's first cry from her igloo at the bottom of the garden. Or if we heard it at all, it was to us like the far-off challenge of our enemy and prey, the neighbor's polar cat. But soon the voice grew louder. "Fire!" cried Mrs. Prothero as she beat the dinner gong. I wish I could do that in a Welsh accent, but anyway, you get it. Fire. And we ran down the garden with the snowballs in our arms toward the house, and smoke indeed was pouring out of the dining room, and the gong was bombulating, and Mrs. Prothero was announcing ruin like the like the town crier in Pompeii. This was better than all the cats in Wales standing on the wall in a row. We bounded into the house, laden with snowballs, and stopped at the open door of the smoke-filled room. Something was burning, all right. Perhaps it was Mr. Prothero, who always slept there after his midday meal with a newspaper over his face. But he was standing in the middle of the room saying, "A fine Christmas," and smacking out the smoke with a slipper. "Call the fire brigade," cried Mrs. Prothero as she beat the gong. "There won't be any," said Mr. Prothero. "It's Christmas." There was no fire to be seen, only clouds of smoke, and Mr. Prothero standing in the middle of them, waving his slipper as though he were conducting. "Do something," he said, and we threw all of our snowballs into the smoke. I think we missed Mr. Prothero and ran out of the house to the telephone box. "Let's call the police as well," Jim said, "and the ambulance, and Ernie Jenkins. He likes fires." So that's the long excerpt. And then I'm going to skip over Christmas Day, which is absolutely delightful, but long, and read you from Christmas Night, which is the end of this long prose poem. Always on Christmas night, there was music. An uncle played the fiddle. A cousin sang Cherry Ripe, and another uncle sang Drake's Drum. It was very warm in the little house. Auntie Hannah, who had gotten on to the parsnip wine, sang a song about bleeding hearts and death, and then another in which she said her heart was like a bird's nest, and everyone laughed. And then I went to bed. Looking through my bedroom window out into the moonlight and the unending smoke-colored snow, I could see the lights in the windows of other houses on our hill and hear the music rising from them, up the long, steady falling night. I turned the gas down. I got into bed. I said some words to the close and holy darkness, and I slept. Thank you. I think we're back to you, Amanda, with a song.
Amanda has asked that she and I swap spots. So I'm going to jump in for her request and read very quickly a poem in Irish. It's a child's poem, to be honest, about snow. And
I thought it would go nicely after Dylan Thomas and all the snow and Annie's reading. So
it's called The Soft White Snow in English, and Snach the Bugwan. And I did find an author, Sean O'Finua. I'll send that to you there, Ija, as well. But thanks to the powers of the Irish-speaking internet,
the Google gods.
But I'm primarily by profession a science teacher, but at the high school where I teach, I also teach Irish, Gaelic from time to time, and as an elective language class. And this is a poem I have all my students memorize, and it's a grade that they have. And I have students who are now graduated, and occasionally when I see them around, or if they drop me a note, they'll throw in little like, oh, I remember that snow poem, and they'd start to recite it off, and they'd get some of it right and some of it wrong. But it's funny to see adolescents excited about a kid's poem about snow in a different language. But anyway, it's great. So I'll read it to follow Ija's lead. I'll read it in Irish first, and then in English. You may or may not notice we both are Irish speakers, but we have different dialects. So Ija would have Munster Irish in the south, and I would have Donegal Irish, which is from the northwest. So you might, if you've got keen ears, you'll hear a few differences there. But so, an snark the bugboan. Het snark the bugboan, nu is on spare, nur vime malien labi rare. Ta snark the bugboan, nishin nachat. Got chach agus straid, got cran agus park. Bei sport agus spree ag mhain agus mavan, ag sugrú news na snark the bugboan. So the soft white snow fell from the sky when I was in my bed last night. The soft white snow is now in every place, on every house and street, every tree and field. There will be basically great fun with me and the poem. It's my friend Sean, but I put Movan for Amanda. So we'll have great fun playing today in the soft white snow. As I said, a fun little kid's poem, but it's kind of neat.
Aww.
So good Amagav. Inish show Movan Amanda Beshi Gratwer on Eladiv. She's going to sing another song for you.
By yoga. All right. So one more piece of music for you. This is a song called Linter Dún Cruiskin. There are many different versions of this song around Ireland. And that line, Linter Dún Cruiskin, means let us fill the jug. So it's a drinking song, but more to the point, the lyrics are rather wistful about, yes, slancha. The lyrics are, I think, really lovely, and they're rather wistful, thinking about days gone by and the great times that we have had together, maybe drinking, but also just, spending time with each other and talking and talking tea and tunes. Exactly. And so it's a kind of a celebration of life song, and I just thought it was appropriate because, in this time when we can't actually be together, it does make us all a little wistful to spend time with each other, but we can still share things with each other and reach out to each other in different ways and celebrate life as much as we can. So, Sho Linter Dún Cruiskin. wuchali, o malam shiv kisheri. Shiv hogo krina kalinis, gri a hrinni dini. Nur swintum herna skafferis, I krinner herna nini. Ik kwichu herna stravagis, a kogani geschitu. Is linter doen de kruiskin spilsjalan. Is jakketi en een leuwe hallen in de jilsja. Vreemd dat hun er is moe voor Christi. Alle meidjes, bij mijn schalke schimsa. O bij me zoek mama, is blooide worden heel schaal. Is linter doen de kruiskin spilsjalan. Van de vuur moet ik de tjak no alle honena. Ik algeris prullerose verhulen mina. Zwei euro helga staffere grimski handen in van. Schießt pogo hiu glad see de pork die akko kriel. Is linked in de kruiskin spilsjalan. Ich alone Virginia gwen huser lachen katja. En pibere shunim dun shin go hevin sasta. Så boren akne majnya högak strugan gragja. Skis va huen glana nog og rikni chitten tanja. Is linkte rune kruskins bjushalan. Ar manat leshna leshin amora darin sil shaw. You'll green a target tanning on the galahans and the You'll kill my name, the clenched on the fudgelon, the pleebon. Lil on the blood von falling, agus brishin machrisa. Is linked to the kruskins bjushalan. Another vase me manu jatlingi mahire jigna bjari. All hagi is kjagi koklani ma for nari. Anshen tukna kjellmes janagi maharu. Is boesh the gila batal cha mahart bagas mahana. Is linked to the krushkin is bjushalan. Bjushalan harje. Be full.
Just kidding, I just.
Oh, he muted me.
I'm sorry.
You're done.
I was too quick with the mute button. My bad. Go ahead.
Oh, I said, fill the jug and may it be full. That's all.
Very good. Very good. That was lovely. And believe it or not, folks, with that, we're done. Thank you for being with us today. In closing, I first want to thank our presenters today, Ida O'Carroll, Annie Rogers, and our singer musicians, Amanda Bernhardt and Jonathan Kennedy, for their lovely and very personal renditions of poetry and music. We'd also like to take this chance to acknowledge the continuing support of the Irish Consulate in Boston, and specifically the Consul General, Alicia Moore, along with the Government of Ireland's Immigrant Support Program, without which we would not be able to continue as an organization the way we have. But before we go, it would be remiss of me not to mention once again that it's time to renew your membership in the Amherst Irish Association. The spring season will begin on Sunday, January 30th, with a celebration of Bridget, pagan goddess and saint, from our own Ida O'Carroll in honor of St. Bridget's Day on February the 1st. Our new 2022 calendar is about to be printed, and there are a variety of items of particular interest to renewing members that we've been waiting in the wings. Surely, this would be a well-spent $25, no doubt. You can find a membership application link on the main page of our website at www.amherstirish.org. And we thank you. For many of us, like the previous one, 2021 has been another difficult year, but it's made easier in some small measure by being able to continue to share Irish culture and heritage in some form together. We all look forward to the day when we can meet in person once again to check in, to share stories, and a bit of crack perhaps, and to relish our hearty tea and scones, as Edith is showing you the mug. So on that optimistic note, let me end today's festivities with a traditional Irish blessing for the road, as it were. May you be blessed with the spirit of the season, which is peace, the gladness of the season, which is hope, and the heart of the season, which is love. Best wishes. We'll see you soon in 2022. Slán a bhaile. Take care, everyone.